Okay, we're going to talk about formula funding. First time I had the opportunity to send you an email as a group. I sent you several of them, I think, last week, and found through the feedback that I got from institutions, I was able to catch a couple of errors within the first hour after I sent it out. And that's one of the reasons that we do send out data, especially that affects your money. We try to send out information to you before we send it to the LBB or to the governor's office or to wherever it's going outside the agency. So I know all the chief financial officers. I've talked to them several times, and they know that when they get something like that, that we try to give them as much time as possible to check the information and to spot those glaring errors that I didn't see after looking at it for 2 days in a row. But within 30 minutes, somebody mentioned it to me, and we found an error and got that corrected. The main purpose of that is to get it as accurate as possible before it goes over to the guys that are making the final decision about the money. What I want to talk about today is we're in transition in formula funding, where community colleges for years has had one formula. And what we're proposing this time is a change. And so I want to go through the process quickly, and then maybe later when we have our question and answer session, if you have some questions about formula funding, we can get to those. The process of formula funding historically, it has been a fairer way for the legislature to allocate funds among all 50 districts. The alternative would be, and this is an alternative that is used in some states where you have a very few institutions, is that each one of your presidents would go lobby to the legislature and ask for money. They would be presenting their budget to the legislature and saying, we need this money, and will you please give us this money? The Texas, being as large as it is with as many institutions, early on felt like that we needed a formula, and Don Hudson at TAC did a dissertation on Texas formula, and if you really want to know the history of it, call Don Hudson and get a copy of his dissertation, because he went back to the 40s and did a historical perspective on it. But the formula recommendations come through the coordinating board, and by statute we're required to send that to the LBB and to the governor's budget office by June 1, a recommendation on how the funds will be allocated to the 50 community college districts. The timeline, as soon as the session is over in the odd year, which is hopefully the end of May, if we don't have special sessions during the summer, the Community College Formula Advisory Committee will be organized and appointed by our board, and we will start meeting at the middle to the end of August in the odd year, and we will work to make a recommendation, working every meeting monthly, to make a recommendation to our board or to our commissioner by January of the even year. And that gives the staff time to get the information together as to what the financial impact would be of that recommendation, and present it to our committees, board committees, in March, and then to our board in April. That gives us meeting our deadline of statutorily required to submit a recommendation to the LBB in June of the even year. After that, we get into where we are right now, which is that we've presented this to the LBB. November 1, the LBB asked us to give them a preliminary run, first formula run, so that they will know how much each institution would be receiving and how much the board's asking for as the needs for higher education. All three sectors, health-related, community and technical colleges, and general academics, we submit that first formula run November 1. And that's why, again, there's a push for getting data in for the fall semester a little bit earlier than what we do annually, so that we can get that first formula run with fall data in that preliminary run. Congratulations to all of your staff that work at the college that worked very hard on this, because we were able to do that. 100% of the general academics, the community technical colleges, and the health-related institutions, we received data that we could use. Now, it wasn't certified, and we didn't require it to be certified, but we needed error-free data so that we could feel certain that as accurately as possible, we were providing the legislature with up-to-date, the latest information available. They will use that to prepare the base bill, which will be presented to the legislature in January. And then it'll go through the legislative process all through the spring, and hopefully at the end of May, we'll have a budget. Okay, formula funding, and this chart here shows you, based on your total community college budgets, revenue, how much are we talking about? And this kind of shows you that there's an appropriated section that's in green. It's roughly a third of your total revenue, your total sources, so it's not everything that you count on. You have local funds, which are primarily your property taxes. You get some federal funds, which majority of you, that is your financial aid budgets. And then you have tuition and fees from students and a little slice of auxiliary. Now, the appropriated funds, formula general revenue for the community colleges is the majority of that appropriated money that you get. Unlike the universities, you don't have a permanent university fund. You don't have a great amount of special items. A few of you have special items, but not many. And I think most of you probably know this, but the way we calculate the appropriation formula is that we come up with a contact hour rate. And that rate is based on a cost study that's been done for 30, 35 years. Community colleges annually are asked to submit cost data by discipline. There's 26 disciplines identified, and we come up with a rate based on the community college's input, and it's the average rate. We take all of your contact hours for each discipline and all the costs that are reported to us for each discipline, and allocate those to come up with an average rate for the state. All of your overhead costs, like your administrative, student services, libraries, all of that is allocated based on contact hours. So those are a fully weighted rate for each one of your contact hours. And generally, the state appropriations that you get for those is about a third of what the cost is, what the costs have been reported. Now, the formula appropriation request that the board has put forward this time would raise that to about 39% of the fully weighted costs. And in the past, as I said, we're in transition. We're going from one formula that's based only on contact hours, and the proposal to the legislature is to split that appropriation into three groups three pots of money. Your enrollment contact hour funding would still be the majority of it, but 10% would be for outcomes. And then instead of a small institution supplement, which some of you have received in the past, the proposal this year is that we give a base level of funding of $1 million to each district. Now, $1 million to Brazosport is a lot different than $1 million to Dallas or Houston or Austin, the large ones. But it will cover, what the proposal is that $1 million will cover a basic structure of a community college, no matter what size. So each community college would, part of their appropriation would be $1 million for base funding, and then 10% for outcomes funding, and the remainder would be for enrollment. And I think, I won't repeat this, Dominic went over this earlier. It's our outcomes flow metrics, and in the email that I sent you last week, there is a PDF file in there called Data Flow for Success Points, and that that document was developed by the planning staff that ran all the data, that wrote the programs that pulled that data out of our database, and it tells you in great detail what report each one of those metrics came from. And since the CBM reports, like the 2 and the 4 and the S now, have changed over the years, there's even detail as to, okay, in 2009, here's where the data came from, 2010, here's where it came from, and 11. And then when we add 12, which we hope to do when we do our spring update to the LBB, we will have a different set of data reports to pull from. What I wanted to talk about next is how we, in March, as Susan I think mentioned earlier, we are required to give an update to the LBB for for the formula funding calculation. And the reason for that is that the base bill will go through the whole legislative process using this initial data that we submitted last week that you got a copy of. And so you'll see whatever it's Senate Bill 1 or House Bill 1, it'll go through the process with that as the data. But that won't be the data that gets appropriated in the final budget bill, because when they go to conference committee, we will have provided the LBB with the spring 12 hours. In addition, on the outcomes funding, we will have added your success points for fiscal year 12. So the 3-year average will go to 10, 11, and 12 for the success points instead of 9, 10, and 11. So there will be a recalculation of the allocation to each one of the districts based on that spring 12 data. Now, I'm going to ask you for some input here, and you go back to your institutions. There are several riders that were added into the legislation or into the budget this past time that some have been controversial. And so I'm asking you if you have if your institution would like to see rider changes. The LBB is still in the process of developing the base bill for the next maybe 20 or 30 days. And so there are still opportunities to change riders that are in the appropriation bill. And so if you have any input or want to supply input, you can send it to me, or you can send it to the LBB directly to Daniel Estrada, who is the budget analyst for the LBB. He is new. This is his first year to be the data analyst for the community and technical colleges. John Willmaker, who has been the budget analyst, has moved over to criminal justice part of the budget. So there's a new person there. So you have an opportunity to provide that input.